The early morning air was thick with mist, curling around the jagged cliffs like living smoke. I had been walking the narrow mountain pass for hours, balancing a small bundle in my arms, unaware of anything beyond the weight of it. The hatchling inside, a sickly blue-scaled dragon no larger than a large cat, trembled violently, its tiny wings flapping weakly against the fabric I'd wrapped around it. Its breathing was shallow, irregular, and I could feel the fragile heartbeat against my chest, faint but unmistakable. "Hold on," I whispered, my own voice lost in the roar of the wind. I didn't know if it was comfort for him or for me. The path was treacherous. Rocks slick with frost, narrow ledges dropping off into empty voids where even a strong wind could sweep a person off balance. But the hatchling's life mattered more than my own safety, so I pressed on, ignoring the sting of cold against my exposed face. I had found him hours before, huddled under a shattered stone outcropping where the storm had apparently trapped him. His mother had been nowhere in sight, and signs of struggle littered the snow. Scales torn, tracks muddled in ice, clawed marks that suggested predators. I could not leave him there. The alternative, returning him to his mother or brood, was impossible. I didn't know who he belonged to, and I doubted they would find him in time. Survival came first. My arms ached. My back burned from the awkward weight. But every time the hatchling coughed, a wet, pained sound that made my stomach twist, I tightened my grip. "You're going to make it," I muttered, though the truth was uncertain. I had no medicine, no knowledge of dragon biology beyond what scraps of lore I'd picked up over the years. I only had warmth, steady movement, and the hope that getting him out of the storm might be enough to buy him a chance. The path opened into a small clearing, where the frost-thickened grass gave way to a shallow stream. I paused to rest, lowering the hatchling briefly to examine him. His scales were dulled from illness, eyes half-lidded, nostrils flaring weakly. I could feel the faintest tremor run through his chest. The instinct to panic rose quickly, but I suppressed it. Calmness would carry him farther than fear. Then I noticed something, just beside me, moving almost imperceptibly in the mist. A massive figure, draped in scales darker than obsidian, enormous wings folded tight against her sides. She walked with deliberate grace, her presence so commanding that the mist itself seemed to part for her. I didn't recognize her at first. She didn't move like a predator or a threat, but her eyes locked onto the hatchling with an intensity that froze me in place. "You are carrying my son," she said, her voice not loud but resonant, vibrating in my chest. I blinked. I didn't know," I stammered. "I just found him. He was alone. He needed help." Her gaze softened fractionally. Not enough to erase the immense power she radiated, but enough to suggest that she was listening, considering. "Few humans would take the risk," she said. "Most would have left him to die." "I couldn't," I said simply. "I couldn't leave him there." She studied me for a long moment, wings twitching with the smallest hint of movement. "Perhaps you understand more than you realize," she murmured. Then, silently, she fell into step beside me, walking as if I were part of her own path. I did not notice at first, focused entirely on keeping the hatchling steady, checking for feverish heat and murmuring reassurances I wasn't sure he could hear. But as we moved together through the mist, I became aware that I was not alone. The queen dragon, towering and regal, maintained pace beside me, her eyes constantly watching the hatchling and me. Yet she never touched, never corrected, simply walked. An observer, a sentinel, a presence that reminded me of how fragile and precious this small life was. Hours passed. The hatchling's breathing slowed slightly. His shivering subsided as my arms warmed him against the chill. The queen's shadow fell across us intermittently, and I felt a strange comfort in her silent vigilance. I didn't know if she approved or merely tolerated, but her presence carried a weight that made me move more carefully, consider each step, each decision. Eventually, the terrain opened into a small valley, where the remnants of an abandoned encampment provided a shelter I could use. I lowered the hatchling gently onto a thick blanket I had spread across a bed of softened snow. He looked up weakly, eyes dim but aware, and I exhaled in relief. The queen hovered a short distance away, head tilted slightly, wings relaxed but still exuding power. She did not speak at first. I waited, unsure if I should address her or remain silent. Then, slowly, she lowered herself onto all fours and allowed her enormous head to come closer to the hatchling, nuzzling him gently. A warmth spread through the immediate area. Not heat exactly, but something deeper, a stabilizing presence that made the tiny dragon shiver less and blink more steadily. "I will watch over him," she said finally, her voice low but carrying authority. "But he is alive because of you. Remember that. Protect him, or do not carry him at all." "I understand," I replied, my voice steady though my heart pounded. And in that moment, I realized, saving him was only the beginning. The bond, unspoken yet undeniable, had begun. I was not just a human carrying a dragon hatchling through the storm. I was now linked to a queen whose patience, power, and presence would follow me wherever I went. The responsibility was immense, terrifying, and necessary. The hatchling, nestled against the blanket, opened his eyes fully for the first time since I had found him. They were a pale, shimmering blue, reflecting not only the dawn light but also something ancient and wise. He chirped softly, a sound that seemed to vibrate in harmony with the queen at my side. I felt that resonance in my chest, a subtle warmth, a pulse of connection I could not explain. The queen, still watching, gave a slow nod of approval. She had walked beside me without forcing anything, yet her silent acknowledgement was more potent than any command. I exhaled, feeling the weight of the storm lift, not from outside, but from within. I had carried a life through freezing winds and frost, and I had emerged not only with him alive but with a bond one could not have anticipated. Somewhere in that valley, as the sun broke through lingering mist and frost melted slowly into streams, I realized I was no longer merely a human moving through dragon territory. I was now a protector, a partner, and a witness to something far older and deeper than I had ever imagined. The journey had begun. The hatchling whimpered softly, shifting in his blanket. I leaned down and murmured, "We'll get you through this, I promise." And the queen, watching silently, allowed a faint flicker of warmth to ripple through the cold morning air, a silent endorsement that the small, trembling dragon in my arms was not alone. Our path forward was uncertain, dangerous, and uncharted, but we would walk it together. The bond had begun. The story was only starting. The valley offered little more than temporary shelter, but it was enough for the hatchling to regain some strength. I built a small windbreak with scavenged stones and branches, covering it with blankets I carried, and set the tiny dragon carefully inside. His breaths were still shallow, but the tremors in his wings had eased. I knelt beside him, carefully checking for frostbite, bruising, or any sign of infection. Every instinct in me screamed to be gentle. One wrong move could worsen his condition. The queen remained nearby, silent yet ever-present, her massive head lowered occasionally to sniff the air, ears swiveling at distant sounds. She never approached the hatchling directly, though her presence radiated a protective aura that I could feel pressing against my chest, warming the thin morning air. It was strange, almost comforting, to have a creature so vast and powerful trust me, even silently with her young. "I don't even know what to feed you," I muttered. "Do you need raw meat? Warm blood?" I had no idea what hatchlings this young required. My hands hovered over small scraps of dried venison I had in my pack, unsure if it would harm him or help. He sniffed the offerings weakly and made a soft noise that sounded like agreement, but I could not tell if it was interest or mere survival instinct. I crushed some into tiny pieces and mixed them with melted snow water to soften it, gently feeding him spoonful by spoonful. Each intake brought a faint rise in his energy. His eyes brightened slightly, and the shivers grew less pronounced. The queen shifted then, her massive tail brushing against the snow as she adjusted position. I realized I had been speaking aloud, trying to fill the silence, trying to anchor myself as much as the hatchling. "You're lucky," I said quietly. "I don't even know how I'm here, but I'm not letting you die." Not on my watch. She tilted her head, eyes narrowing, observing me. For a heartbeat, I wondered if she understood my words, if she recognized intent or just the rhythm of my voice and the vibration of my heartbeat through the frost. Then the hatchling shifted against my palm, his small head brushing my wrist, and a flicker of warmth shot through me. I froze, startled. It was subtle, fleeting, but undeniable. Not heat exactly, but a connection, a pulse that mirrored his fragile heartbeat. "You're bonded," the queen finally said, voice low yet resonant. "It's not complete, not permanent, but it exists." I swallowed. Bonded? What does that mean? "It means his life is tied to yours in a way that surpasses simple survival," she explained. "You have chosen him as much as he has chosen you. The connection will influence both of you subtly at first. You will feel each other's states, your instincts will begin to align, and decisions made by one will resonate in the other." I shook my head. "I didn't choose this. I paused, looking down at the fragile creature struggling against his weakness. "I just saved him. Choice is not always deliberate," she said, her voice carrying a weight that pressed against the valley walls. "It can be instinctive, reactive, yet the consequences are enduring." I nodded, though I did not fully understand. The hatchling coughed softly, a wet, rattling sound, and I wrapped him more securely in blankets. "We need to get you somewhere warmer," I said. "Somewhere safe. I can't carry you forever, but we'll figure it out." He tilted his head toward the queen, who lowered her massive head to watch closely. I realized then that this was more than protection, it was guidance. She was silently monitoring, assessing my capability, evaluating whether I could truly be trusted with her child. I had faced storms, predators, and frost before, but never scrutiny like this. The weight of her presence pressed heavily, and yet, strangely, I did not feel threatened. I felt accountable. Hours passed as the hatchling recovered slowly. Sunlight crept across the valley floor, melting patches of frost and warming the thin earth. I ventured small sips of water into his mouth, keeping him hydrated, and monitored his breathing. Each tiny rise in energy reinforced what the queen had said. We were now connected. Not by force, not by choice alone, but by necessity and instinct, and the bond would grow stronger the longer we survived together. By evening, the hatchling could lift his head fully and tried a tentative flap of wings, though he immediately fell back onto the blanket. "You're going to need more than this valley?" I whispered, brushing the frost from his scales. "We need a proper place, somewhere sheltered, somewhere you can heal." The queen moved closer, careful to keep her bulk at a respectful distance. She exhaled softly, a mist curling faintly from her nostrils, and I felt the hatchling shiver less, as if her breath reinforced my care. "You cannot simply walk with him forever," she said. "Others will come, curious, hostile, opportunistic. You must plan." I nodded, thinking ahead even as I felt exhaustion creep in. "I know. I'll find somewhere safe. I'll keep him alive." The hatchling's eyes, bright now though still feeble, flicked to me and then to the queen. In that moment, I sensed not fear, but understanding. He trusted me. The queen trusted me cautiously. And somehow, the bond pulsing faintly through my veins assured me that together, we could survive whatever lay ahead. The sun dipped below the jagged horizon, and I realized that the night would bring both danger and opportunity. But as I adjusted the blankets around the hatchling and felt his warmth against my chest, I knew one thing clearly. The bond had begun, and nothing would ever be the same again. Night fell quickly in the mountains, and with it came a bitter wind that cut through even the thick layers I had wrapped around both myself and the hatchling. I built a makeshift shelter against a rocky overhang, using the last of my blankets and a few broken branches to create a windbreak. The hatchling curled tightly against my chest as I sat cross-legged, rocking him gently to keep him calm. His breaths were still shallow, but stronger than earlier, and the faint warmth he radiated pulsed in tandem with the mark along my forearm. I could feel the queen's presence even in the darkness. She had shifted slightly closer during the last light, lying low on the opposite side of the clearing, wings tucked and tail coiled protectively. Though she did not intervene directly, the energy she radiated was tangible, like a quiet pressure in the air, a reminder that while I was responsible for the hatchling, I was not alone. Her gaze never left us, and every time I adjusted my hold on him, I felt her attention like a gentle but powerful weight on my shoulders. "I don't know what to do next," I muttered quietly, more to myself than to anyone else. "I don't know where to take you. No one will just leave a hatchling out here. Not safely." The hatchling stirred faintly and nuzzled against my neck, his tiny body shivering but not from cold. The silver of his eyes caught the dim moonlight, reflecting it back like frozen stars. And then it happened again. That subtle pulse, the warmth deep in my chest, responding to him as though our hearts were briefly synchronized. I drew a slow breath, realizing that whatever this bond was, it was more than instinct. It was awareness. Awareness that connected us beyond mere proximity. The queen shifted slightly, exhaling a stream of frosted air that traced delicate patterns across the snow. The hatchling responded immediately, giving a soft chime of sound and pressing closer to me. The rhythm of his pulse, the weight of his tiny form, even the faintest quiver of his wings. All of it seemed to echo through the bond. My own senses sharpened in response. I could feel his discomfort, anticipate his movements, even sense when he was about to cough or shiver before it happened. I realized then that survival was no longer just my responsibility. It was shared. I could not simply carry him. I had to think, plan, and act in tandem with him, even at this early stage of the bond. And while the queen's eyes never left us, I felt no fear, only accountability. Hours passed slowly. I fed him small amounts of water from a flask, warming it slightly in my hands first. I crushed tiny pieces of dried meat and softened them with snowmelt, feeding him carefully and ensuring he swallowed each bite. The hatchling responded gradually, strength returning in faint increments. His wings twitched experimentally, claws flexing against my palms, and the warmth between us strengthened. Every time he moved, the pulse traveled through the mark, a quiet signal that we were adapting to each other. Then, faintly in the distance, I heard it. A low rumble, almost imperceptible over the night wind. The hatchling stiffened immediately, head raising slightly. I followed his gaze toward the valley edge and froze. Shapes moved through the mist, for figures, enormous and deliberate, advancing toward us. Dragon binders. Humans who preyed on rare dragons, capturing bonded hatchlings to sell, study, or weaponize. I could sense their intent before seeing their weapons. My pulse quickened, but the bond responded with him, steadying my heartbeat, sharpening my awareness. "They'll try to take you," I whispered, feeling the warmth flare inside me, synchronized with his anxious tremors. The queen shifted her massive frame to block the path slightly, exuding authority and presence. I felt the hatchling respond instantly, tiny claws pressing against my arms as if drawing strength from my stance. Together, we became a single unit, human and hatchling, aligned by the bond. The approaching binders hesitated at the sight of her immense bulk, their steps faltering as the frost around my arms and boots faintly shimmered in response to the hatchling's rising energy. I did not have weapons. The hatchling did not yet have strength. But instinct, honed through survival, surged. I took a deliberate step forward, positioning myself between the binders and the hatchling, and felt the bond ripple. A warning, an awareness, a coordination I did not consciously control. The silver mark along my arm glimmered faintly, and the warmth inside me answered the hatchling's tension, steadying him as we faced the threat together. The lead binder, tall, armored, confident, approached, holding a metallic capture rod. He did not know that the moment he stepped closer, the hatchling would react through me. A controlled surge of frost snaked along the rod, freezing its mechanism before it could deploy. The other binders faltered, their weapons rendered ineffective not by brute force, but by synchronized instinct. I realized in that moment that the bond was more than awareness. It was defense, strategy, and coordination. We were connected, responding without words, anticipating each other's movements. The binders, confused and wary, exchanged glances, and the queen's presence amplified our shared focus. Finally, the lead binder raised a hand in surrender. "Enough," he said cautiously. "You are bonded." "Yes," I said softly, still holding the hatchling close. "And we will not be separated." The binders retreated silently, melting into the mist beyond the valley, leaving behind only disturbed snow and a faint sense of tension in the air. The queen exhaled, a stream of frost curling into the night, and the hatchling shivered slightly against me, more from relief than cold. I leaned down, brushing frost from his delicate scales. "We're safe for now," I whispered. The warmth pulsing through the bond calmed, steadying like a heartbeat in sync with his own. I realized then that our survival depended not just on avoiding danger, but on understanding this connection, nurturing it, and trusting it as much as we trusted each other. The queen lowered her head slightly, eyes glowing faintly in the moonlight, as if acknowledging the bond. "Protect him," she said softly, "or do not carry him at all." "I understand," I replied, determination hardening in my chest. The hatchling lifted his head, small wings twitching experimentally, eyes meeting mine. For the first time, I sensed recognition. Not fear, not confusion, but understanding. He trusted me, and through this bond, I trusted him. We were no longer merely human and dragon hatchling. We were partners, bound by survival, choice, and the silent, powerful connection that had begun in the storm. And together, we would face whatever dangers lay ahead. Dawn broke over the valley, casting pale light on frost-specked rocks and the scattered remnants of snow from the night's lingering chill. The hatchling stirred in my arms, wings stretching weakly, claws curling around my forearm. His breathing was steadier now, though I could still feel the tremors from illness and fatigue. The warmth between us, the pulse through the silver mark along my arm, was steady, comforting, and alive. It was no longer subtle. It was as if the bond had matured overnight, growing stronger through shared survival and the unspoken trust that had formed. I set him gently onto a soft bed of blankets I had arranged on a sheltered patch of ground. He blinked at me, blue eyes shimmering like crystal, then pressed his forehead against my hand. The warmth surged slightly in response, a gentle reminder that our bond was alive and aware. I brushed the frost from his scales, careful not to startle him. "We need to move," I murmured. "Somewhere warmer, somewhere safe. You can't stay here alone." The queen remained nearby, silent as always, yet her presence was unmistakable. She had followed at a distance all night, never intervening directly but never leaving our side. Now she shifted, wings extending slightly as the first rays of sunlight hit the valley floor. A faint exhalation of frost curled around the hatchling, and I saw his small body respond immediately, quivering less, breathing more steadily. Her approval, quiet and deliberate, was not given lightly. I packed our meager supplies, wrapping the hatchling securely in blankets and adjusting the straps on my pack for balance. Every movement he made, every shift of his tiny weight, was mirrored subtly in the warmth I felt along the mark. It was no longer just a sensation, it was guidance, a rhythm that helped me anticipate his needs before he could communicate them. As we began moving toward a narrow canyon that could provide shelter from both predators and wandering patrols, the air shifted again. A low, resonant hum traveled through the valley. The hatchling stiffened immediately, eyes widening. I followed his gaze to the canyon entrance. 3 figures emerged, cloaked in dragonhide armor, each carrying rods and nets designed to capture bonded dragons. Dragon binders. My pulse quickened, but the hatchling reacted first, sending a subtle ripple through the bond. Frost appeared along my forearm where the mark shimmered faintly, a defensive pulse that mirrored his own tension. "They're here?" I whispered, pressing the hatchling closer to my chest. The queen rose smoothly to her full height, wings spreading to cast a shadow across the valley floor. The binders halted, eyes widening at the massive silhouette. The hatchling's wings twitched, but he did not panic. He trusted the connection, trusted me. One of the binders, tall and armored, stepped forward, rod in hand. I moved instinctively, placing myself fully between him and the hatchling. At the same moment, the bond pulsed sharply. The hatchling's small claws pressed against my arm, and frost leapt along the metal rod, freezing its locking mechanism before it could deploy. The other binders hesitated, unease flickering across their faces. I realized then that the bond was more than awareness. It was coordination, instinct amplified and shared. Every movement I made, the hatchling mirrored and enhanced. Every attempt by the binders to separate us was anticipated, countered without conscious thought. The silver mark along my arm brightened faintly, synchronized with his heartbeat, signaling alignment, alertness, and readiness. The lead binder, sensing the futility of their approach, raised his hand in surrender. "Enough," he said cautiously. "The bond, it's real." "Yes," I replied softly, still holding the hatchling securely. "And it cannot be broken." The binders retreated, melting into the mist of the canyon, leaving only disturbed snow behind. The queen exhaled a stream of frost, and the hatchling shivered slightly, but from relief, not cold. I leaned down, brushing away frost and snow, feeling the subtle pulse of the bond through the mark. It was steady, protective, and alive. "You have proven yourself," the queen murmured, her voice low but resonant. "Protect him, or do not carry him at all." "I understand," I said, determination firm in my chest. The hatchling lifted his head, wings twitching experimentally, eyes meeting mine. For the first time, he seemed aware not only of his own survival but of ours together. I realized then that our connection was more than instinct or reflex. It was choice, trust, and partnership. We had been tested, and we had passed. We began moving again, carefully down the canyon, each step deliberate. I carried him, guided by the bond, alert to every shift in his weight, every pulse of energy, every subtle warning. The queen followed at a distance, her eyes scanning for threats, her presence reassuring. The path ahead was uncertain, full of dangers both human and dragon, but for the first time, I did not fear it. With the hatchling at my side and the bond between us strengthened by survival, trust, and unspoken understanding, I knew we could face whatever lay ahead. The storm had tested us, the night had challenged us, and the threats had tried to break us. But we were unbroken. The bond had begun, and with it our journey together truly started.